As we mentioned earlier, some of the America First Republicans are walking on eggshells as they try to call for peace without actually saying anything bad about Trump and his administration. So Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene wrote this: "I'm praying for peace," she says. "Peace, that is my official position." Not very strong from her. Charlie Kirk wrote on X, "In the hours and days to come, there will be hawks who urge America to increase its involvement in this conflict. We should be deeply skeptical of these arguments. Israel believed their existence was at stake and they acted accordingly and impressively. This is Israel's fight to finish as they see fit, not America's." And other conservatives who are speaking out are a little bit more forceful in doing so. In his newsletter, Tucker Carlson wrote this. He said, "On Thursday, Iran's president threatened to destroy any country that eliminates his government's nuclear facilities. Now the world will learn what that looks like. While the American military may not have physically perpetuated the assault, years of funding and sending weapons to Israel, which Donald Trump just bragged about on Truth Social, undeniably placed the United States at the center of last night's event. Washington knew these attacks would happen. They aided Israel in carrying them out. Despite being complicit in the act of war, the president hopes last night's events will help his ongoing nuclear negotiations with Iran." And finally, Sager and Jetty wrote, "Trump has now praised Israel's strike, affirmed US material support, and Israeli media is reporting his public opposition was a disinformation campaign to mislead Iran. So in other words, Trump, not Israel, has made a mockery of all of us who wanted to avoid this war." So yeah, he posted that in response to one of his own earlier tweets where he had initially said that Israel has made a mockery out of the United States. And he clarified, no, it wasn't just Israel, it was our own president who did this to us. And Representative Thomas Massey, he posted this in response to someone calling out the Trump administration as Bush 3.0, voted unity party, got uniparty. Okay, so last one, we're gonna end with Jack Posobiec and Matt Walsh. And they're taking this opportunity to argue that the United States should take a page from Israel's playbook. Jack Posobiec asked, "When are we going after the cartels like this?" And then Matt Walsh responded, "Very good question. The cartels have been poisoning and murdering Americans for decades. We could kill them all with a well-planned attack. Why haven't we? So I like their response to all of this was just to completely change the subject and talk about something else that is not the possibility of Trump leading this country into a potentially what could be a very large scale war after campaigning repeatedly and calling himself the anti-war president, right? That was one of the big things on his campaign, several campaigns, that he said, you know what, I'm the anti-war president. I'm gonna end the wars as soon as I get into office, which he hasn't been able to do. And I'm not gonna get us into any new ones. And here we are on the brink of what could be a very large scale conflict. But what's a right winger to do? Marjorie Taylor Greene, disappointing, right? She's known for saying the things that others would never dare to say. Where is she now? She clearly feels some type of way, but now she's too scared to speak up when war is on the actual line. And now we've heard from Trump and Marco Rubio that Trump didn't actually want this attack to go through, but Israel did it anyway. By the way, that makes what Lindsey Graham said in the previous segment all the more ridiculous. None of this makes the United States or this Trump administration look good or strong or competent. And it is weird, like in these discussions between the right wing and the right wing, right? These debates that it's having within itself. We on the left are saying, you know what? You're like, yeah, I kind of agree with these right wingers over here, not those right wingers over there. But that's not even what it's about. And that's something about this particular story that's so interesting, is that people are looking at this from an outside perspective, because now things could potentially get very real, and they're saying, I don't actually want this, right? This is not what I voted for. This is not the administration that I voted for, the people who did actually vote for Trump. So Michael, let's get your thoughts on this.
What's astonishing is that they're happy with everything else, right? Now they come at this like, oh, but now this is ridiculous. This isn't what I asked for.
Yeah, everybody has a line.
Right,
somewhere.
yeah, I guess so. But that bill, that big beautiful bill, I love everything in that. I love what's happening in cities cities across America, but come on, you're right. Yes, everybody's got a line. It also, from just sort of 1,000 feet away, political perspective, it's interesting to see a fractured Republican Party, because generally in contemporary history, you don't see that a lot. But you have seen it in the House of Representatives, and now you're seeing it sort of writ large within the party, that there are these serious divides over serious issues, and that doesn't happen. They usually march in lockstep with one another, and as I guess it was Massey who said, voted unity party got uniparty, and the truth is that that is unusual, and that has worked against Republicans. In the House, it has held up legislation. When this bill comes back from the Senate, it's going to hold it up and maybe make it unsuccessful on the first few tries because of the fact that they're so divided. And then you get to an issue like this, which is a fundamental issue, and you have a president who really isn't in tune with either side. He says the right things in terms of saying he does the sloganeering very well, but he doesn't do the other part because he doesn't understand it. He's about the sloganeering and the America First. It sounds good, and it works on the trail, and it did work on the trail at least twice. So it's a fascinating thing to watch within the Republican Party. As for Matt Walsh and Jack Posobiec, I don't agree with these guys very often, but it is, and I understand it's diverting from what the issue at hand is. But if you're saying, like, we're going to go into another country and bomb their nuclear facilities and keep our people, put our people in danger, well, why not go to a place where they're already in danger and blow the cartels away? It's an interesting take at the very least.
Yeah, I don't love it, but it is definitely interesting. So a couple of things. First, let's start out with our poll on when we do the show live, which is Monday through Friday, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern. Make sure you're checking it out every day. We ask you guys to get involved. So in this case, will the America First crowd turn on Trump if the US gets involved in the war? And so 54% so far saying no. And remember, we covered it a little bit earlier, the war hawks, right? So they were always in favor of war. Those are the neocons, and they're also in the Republican Party. So those guys are not going to turn because they've always been in favor of war. So the question is MAGA going to turn? So now let's break that down, right? So first category Republicans, the neocons, they wanted this all along. Second category is Marjorie Taylor Greene category, in my opinion, which is the people who are wishy-washy. So she came on this show and said Israel shouldn't get any more money and that we definitely shouldn't attack Iran, but then Israel does attack Iran, we do help them, and now all of a sudden it's, I'm praying for peace. Okay, thoughts and prayers. What happened? I thought you were gonna be against it. Are you against it? You said MAGA would definitely be against it, so she's on the record on that. Let's see, how she handles this going forward. Apparently a little bit afraid to take on Daddy Trump. Now, the third category are the people who are like, well, I'm stuck here. And this is the most interesting category. Posobiec and Charlie Kirk both referenced their audience and MAGA and America First and how they felt about it. So Charlie Kirk was like, well, you know me, guys, I love Israel, and I think Israel's such an important ally and wonderful in parts that we didn't read you. He had a much longer statement. He's like, but I hear what my audience is saying. Oh, see, I told you, forget the leaders, the actual MAGA voters. A lot of them actually believe the anti-war stuff and are anti-war. And Michael talked to them and they said the craziest things for 1-2 years straight that he went and did all those interviews. But were they actually anti-war? Yes, they were anti-war.
And also unanimously. They differed on other things, Cenk, but they were mine was more than anecdotal. Like, I spoke to hundreds and hundreds of people. They all were unanimous about being anti-war.
Yeah, and when I tweet, and I got a lot of followers who are independents and Democrats, but also a lot who are MAGA, right? So when I say anti-war, they're like, yes. When I say Trump shouldn't send in tanks into military and Marines into US cities, they're like, boo! Right? Like, they hate that. So they're very clear on what they want and don't want. They're not shy at all, right? And they didn't want this war. That's why Charlie Kirk's like, I'm kind of in the middle. Don't yell at me either side. Posobiec has got a funny thing. And again, the longer version that I watched of his thing, he clearly said, MAGA's against this. This is bad. I'm worried we're gonna get sucked into the war. But in order to split the baby, he's like, but maybe we should do it in Mexico. It's like such a terrible idea for Israel to do this, Iran. And in the same breath, we should do it to Mexico. It's crazy, right?
Well, also like I know, but when right, but when you, it's a totally different conversation, and you're talking about something else. But there is something still compelling to me about that as a juxtaposition to what's going on in the world in terms of what it's doing to America versus just out in the ether.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Not that it's right, but that the America First thinks at least the cartels affect us, whereas Iran doesn't affect us at all. And so what are we doing over there? And then lastly, you have the group that really is against the war, and that's Tucker Carlson and Tom Massey, right? So Tucker Carlson said Trump is complicit. That is heavy language, right? And we shared some of the other things that he said there. And I agree with Tucker on that one. And by the way, I don't know if you noticed, he kind of called Trump dumb. You might have missed it. So when Yaz read it to you there, I'm gonna read it again. This is graphic 9. Despite being complicit in the act of war, the president hopes last night's events will help his ongoing nuclear negotiations with Iran. He's being snide there. I know a lot of people will miss it, but Trump, the story is, and we talked about this a little bit in the first hour, that Trump told Netanyahu not to attack, but then they were in his ear and they're like, oh no, if we attack, we might be more likely to get them to the negotiating table. And apparently Trump believed that enough to get some of our troops out on Thursday, etc., and leave it basically dealer's choice for Israel, right? And then Netanyahu's like, yes, sucker, right? Because the minute I attack, you're gonna have to defend me, and then you're right in the middle of the war. And that's what Tucker's referring to, like, oh, maybe it'll bring us back to peace negotiations. It's subtle, but he's definitely being sarcastic there about how dumb Trump is and how he got played by Netanyahu.
And also, we shouldn't leave this conversation without mentioning Stephen Witkoff, who is an Upper East Side real estate executive, is the person in the Middle East representing the United States in all of these dealings. And that, when you talk about only the best people, which Trump has said over and over again, that's not who you want over there right now dealing with this. These are unserious people, and these are serious events that are happening.
Yeah, and lastly, yes. Lastly for me is Massey is truly anti-war. So I give Massey credit. And today, America First crowd lost. They lost today. So maybe they come back, maybe they convince Trump, maybe Trump flip-flops. And if he does it in the middle of a war, it'll be super interesting to see, right? But MAGA's hurt, dog. Don't ask them if they're all right, because they took a heavy blow from the neocons today. Yes.
Yeah, like Trump, he has to be the strong man because he would lose whatever is left of his base if he loses that image. So as much as the right is struggling with their messaging here, Trump is too, right? He has to be anti-war, but he also has to maintain this facade that he's actually in control of Israel and Netanyahu. But he especially can't be duped by Israel after he gave Biden such a hard time about being the submissive one in the US-Israel relationship. And then on top of that, there's also the relationship between Trump and Putin that Trump is worried about rocking, and he doesn't want to mess with any of that. But I mean, like Cenk, you asked kind of rhetorically there, like, what are we doing over there? But I do wonder if people really understand what's going on between both Israel and Iran, and why are we even involved? With all of these wars that we see around the world, but especially in the Middle East, there's always a political angle and then an ideological angle. And typically the ideological angle is what is used to sell the public on it and to garner support from the public. But there's always an underlying political or economic angle that is actually driving different countries to get involved in certain conflicts. And with the United States, we know that we usually don't really get involved in anything unless there's something in it for us. So what is in it for us here as far as the US and Iran goes? So these are all things that we should be thinking about. These are the conversations we should be having. And on the right especially, they seem to have kind of like gotten away from what it is that what their goals are here. They want to be anti-war, but then they still have people within their coalition who are actively pushing for this war with Iran because they have to back up Israel. And what's happening in the Middle East right now, and even with Russia, something we're seeing that we haven't really seen in a while, in a few decades, I would say, is that there is an actual ideological war that is happening, right? There are people who are waging war, leaders who are waging war in other nations on ideological bases. And that's interesting because people really have a hard time picking a side whenever it's rooted in something like religion or divine right and that type of thing. So very interesting.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.